Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another movie discussion. This being a recording where I talk about movies that I've watched. For this one, I'm going to be talking about Superman, 2025 Superman, more specifically. Just kind of giving my general thoughts and just kind of doing like a spoiler discussion in general about the movie and my thoughts about everything as it went down. But first and foremost, I should also note, you can check out the time codes. I'll include them so you can kind of jump around the different discussion points and topics that you might want to hear my thoughts on more so than others. But first and foremost, my general thoughts about the movie. I love the movie. I thought it was great. I like the look of it. I love the feel of it. I do like that. I mean, it's been reiterated over and over again by James Gunn and others that it's not an origin story. And it's like, I mean, it's basically kind of like, hey, the movie isn't structured like this, but I remember there were the rumors that the movie was going to be kind of like 1 week in Superman's life, and it's like you could make the argument there's a little bit of that, but it's just like, yeah, smack dab. You don't even get to see the beginning of things. You're smack dab in the middle of. You don't get to see the beginning of Superman's like, oh, this the adventure he's on this week, and you're literally dropped in the middle of the adventure. You don't get to see the beginning because it just kind of all meshes together. So, but I love the story. I thought it was really neat, nice start off to the DCU, even though, well, Creature Commandos is technically the start off, but, you know, Superman's a real jump off point. But I think David Corn Sweat, Rachel Brosnahan, and Nicholas Hoult did fantastic jobs as Clark slash Superman, Lois, and Lex, respectively. I think they did a great job embodying the characters while also putting their own spin to this portrayal, adding their own flavor to it. I think everyone else did such a fantastic job across the board, whether it's a certain Justice Gang or like some of the members of the, we only got a little bit of them, but some of the Daily Planet staff and stuff like that. So, but yeah, like, thought was kind of neat where like a lot of the developments and stuff went. You know, that's the thing. Like, I don't know if you could be like, I don't know if you'd be like surprises, but I was surprised by certain things and being like, oh, this, and this. I was like, okay, because you would almost from the outside looking in, you kind of assume like there's multiple things going on at once, but you realize like, oh, it's all connected. And I like the reveal of how it's all connected and how it all plays out and what the bigger scheme and plan was. So I just thought that was neat, and once again, the movie's just a lot of fun, great action sequences. I know people had issues with the flying sequences because of the trailers and stuff. I thought they looked great. Like I said, just in general, I loved it. You know, I'm ready to kind of just jump straight into some spoilers as we just kind of break the episode down. But in general, like if you haven't seen the movie already, I highly recommend you check it out. A lot of, like I said, a lot of action, a lot of fun, humor, but also a lot of heart to it. All elements, I think, are not, the humor might not be key to it, but I think it's a nice like element to have when it comes to a Superman story. So, it just reiterates why I love the character. I always liked Superman, but as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate and love Superman even more. Like Superman and Lois is one of the reasons why I love the character so much as I do. But like, a lot of superhero stuff has made me love Superman, whether it's my adventures with Superman, this, or like I said, Superman and Lois, or just like Tyler's appearances as Superman and Supergirl, So, or just the Arrowverse in general, rather. So, just like the Flash TV show made me love the Flash, this just reiterates my love for this character. So yeah, I'm just, once again, going forward, I'm going to go into spoilers. I'm going to try to break the movie down chronologically. I might be a little all over the place. I do apologize, but yeah, just kind of running through. But like I said, going forward, I will be doing a spoiler discussion, so you have been warned. First and foremost, I really like because I remember word gotten out about, basically, I think people had seen the movie early. Basically said like the movie opens with like a Star Wars crawl, which it's not a full Star Wars crawl, but basically it's like DCU lore, like 300 years ago, metahumans first appear. I like the 333s all the way through because it's like 300 years ago, metahumans are a thing on Earth, but then like 3 decades ago, we have Clark crash landing here on Earth. And then it's like, what was it, 3 weeks ago, the whole inciting incident for this movie happened. And then like, what was it, 30 minutes ago, he just got his ass whooped by the Hammer of Boravia. And you also find out that that was like, oh, it's interesting, but there's no 3 month period, and we find out, oh, there is actually a 3 month period because that's how long Clark and Lois has been dating. So I was like, okay, that's neat. So yeah, I just thought that was kind of a neat way to go about it, and once again, just like that, like it does something to my brain knowing like, oh, all those threes. I don't know, there's something like weirdly satisfying about a whole bunch of threes. Like it's not I guess it just keeps it easier in your head of like 300 years, 30 years. Because 3 years ago is when he announced himself as Superman. 3 months ago, him and Lois started dating. 3 weeks ago, he basically got involved in an international incident. And 30 minutes ago, he just finished getting his ass whooped. So, but yeah, jumping straight into it. So the scene from the beginning of the trailer is from the first teaser is literally, because even the 5 minute scene they released like a little while back is all just straight from the beginning of the movie. So he calls over Krypto, gets brought to the Fortress of Solitude, and I'm also curious. Like I've seen a few Fortress of Solitudes over my time in like animated form and in live action form, but I think this might be the first one that I've ever seen kind of is able to move, which I think is kind of really interesting and neat. But obviously them like high focusing the sun's energy on him, and because I remember some people having issues because it's like, oh, it's hurting him, but it's like, well, it's because they're hyper focusing it. Like if you get hyper focused sun rays shot at you, like it's meant to like make sure that he's absorbing as much yellow sun radiation as possible so quickly to kind of help recover his wounds and stuff. And also him watching the message of his parents. Once again, the whole conversation about like, oh, who's going to be Jor-El? Bradley Cooper. Makes a lot of sense. James Gunn's worked with him, but I was like, oh, you get like a little small thing, which that means sadly Bradley Cooper won't be anyone else in the DCU. But still, I'm like, oh, that's pretty neat. Obviously, giving us kind of the younger side of the parents. I also really like that they're speaking a different language. The only version, once again, I can think of off the top of my head that's really leaned into that is My Adventures with Superman. Like, that's a problem is like Clark can't understand what his father, Jor-El, is trying to tell him because it's in Kryptonian language and he doesn't understand it. But like this, it's like, it's been translated for him by the robots, but part of the file is corrupted, so he can't fully ascertain the message. But for him, it's like, right, they sent me to Earth like to be its protector, and he's kind of lived with that knowledge, and he's carried that with him as kind of like this badge of honor, this thing that's like keeps him going. So he ends up taking off to deal with the Hammer of Boravia, because it's like, hey, I'm here to deal with you, Superman, because you interfered in something you shouldn't have got mixed up in. And then, they duke it out. And this is where we find out super early on that Lex is behind the Hammer of Boravia. And in fact, he studied Clark so much over the years, Superman, over the years, that it's like, I've created like a tactics of like, okay, he does this, we do this. And he's literally calling it out, and they're messaging it to the Hammer of Boravia to kind of easily beat Superman. I mean, he was at 100% and was getting his ass handed to him. He's only like 80 something after recovering a little bit. So, and we got that sequence where that guy Molly ends up helping him up, but then someone else in the crowd was like, yeah, you might not have needed to get involved with that, because it's like, it's understandable. It's like, a threat's come to our city, and you probably wouldn't be in a situation you are right now if you hadn't done what you did. So it's kind of one of those things of like, you don't want to hear it from someone right now of like, oh, I told you so. It's like, I don't want to hear that right now when I just kind of got my ass handed to me. I'm trying to do good, but the guy flies away. And he flies off, goes to a nearby camp that Lex has set up, and then the device we've seen in the trailers, it's essentially what's the exact wording they use? Like, it's a device that essentially can, if left not done properly, it could basically create a black hole. I don't know. It's not necessary. I don't know if it'd be technically a teleport. I forgot what they actually called it. But use that to go to Lex Corp, and he takes off the helmet, and it's like, oh, Ultraman is. I was like, interesting, because you would have thought those were two separate people. But to be fair, it's like, you do see like it kind of does do the heat vision thing. So you're like, okay, it seems like it might be an Ultraman thing, but I guess it just didn't click in my head that they fully would be the same person. I think I made a mistake in the trailer thinking that was Ultraman and not the other guy, or I feel like I made some mistake conflating those two characters, and funny enough, they're the same character. I think it's so interesting that that because it served its purpose. So and I guess like you kept Superman out of like Boravia's business, so you didn't need the hammer anymore. But even like the president was kind of like, "Yo, that has nothing to do with us. That's not our champion or whatever." So I'm also surprised how little Clark is Clark in this movie. I mean, yes, people call him by Clark, and it's only like a handful of times you see him as like Clark Kent. But like the Clark Kent he pretends to be in front of other people. Get a little taste of it when he's walking through, and like, was it Steve like harassing him about like, yo, you got to use adverbs, dude. What is this garbage you've written? It's like, yeah, he's on the front paper. His mom and pa are calling him, and his mom, not good with technologies, leaning super into the phone, being like, "We're so proud of you," and his dad's just kind of, it's stereotypical country father, just like, just grumbles and just kind of whatever, So it's really cute and adorable. Also like the cat grin of it all. I don't know if that's always her case, but she, because I know in like Supergirl they lean into the fact this cat has always had a thing for Clark, and that kind of gets a little complicated with the Lois of it all. But I don't know if but like her being like, "Hey Clark," like she's a little flirty. So I just thought that was so interesting. I don't know if that's what she traditionally is like in the comics, like where she like leans in into being flirty. Like Arrowverse is the only time I'm aware of that, because she's not like that with Clark in My Adventures with Superman. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if like maybe that's only some versions of Cat Grant really leans into the whole like being flirty with him. What I was also surprised by is the Jimmy of it all. I'm like, yo, Jimmy's a ladies' man. How? I've never known Jimmy to be a ladies' man. He's always been kind of like the dweeby dude that works at the planet. So for him to be kind of like the cool guy that the girls are like, "Oh my God, look at Jimmy." I'm like, what the hell? And it becomes a crucial part of the plot that Jimmy's so like lovable and that women are like gushing over him. It's a super important part of the plot, which I thought was kind of interesting. But you can make the argument like, well, is that more Jimmy, or is that more speaking about that's more about that other person's character rather than Jimmy like making this person swoon? Whatever the case may be. I also like the thing about how they're kind of like debating whether or not the Hammer of Boravia is actually from Boravia, because Lois kind of found that suspicious. I know Clark's like, yeah, Superman said that didn't sound like a Boravian accent. And I didn't know if I was like, I don't know if this is kind of leaning into like Superman, not every version, but like some versions, he's pretty good with languages, so he knows a lot of languages. Once again, I'm not trying to compare and contrast, but it's just like the most recent version was like Superman and Lois, like that Clark knew other languages. So for him to kind of pick, I don't know if that was him really picking that up, or it might be because he, had some slight experiences with the accent and he has good hearing, so he'd probably be able to pick up like, it's someone putting up a front, someone putting on an accent. But I love Lois chastising him like, "Oh, you talked to," he's like, yeah, me and Superman, good guy, great guy. I was like, people make jokes about Batman, Bruce Wayne being like, "Oh, Batman's pretty cool. He's a pretty good guy." So it's funny when Clark does it sometimes in different iterations, but it is super funny when you are bigging yourself up. Be like, yeah, Superman, he's a great guy. I love interviewing the guy. It's so great. Which even Lois later on brings up, it's kind of unethical, because like the whole point is like, from a journalistic standpoint, you're not supposed to be prepped 100% for every, like, that's when you get honesty, is when you catch people off guard. Like, they're not prepared ahead of time to have like some prepped answer. It's kind of effed up when like, well, you already know the questions because you're basically asking yourself. And it's like, there's a journalistic lack of journalistic integrity when you really break that down. Obviously, it was a scene in like what was the official trailer, but I love the conversation between Lois and when she's interviewing Superman, and I think and once again, and I said it during the trailer, that's Lois being Lois. She's a great journalist, and she's going to ask questions. Like, I'm going to be frank with you because I'm going to attack this like a journalist. I'm not your girlfriend right now. I am reporter Lois Lane doing my job and doing my due diligence because you. Like, I will give it to you straight rather than you being completely blindsided by someone else who will ask you these questions, because like at least she tries to like separate like the professionalism with the personal, which I actually think is something she struggles with in this movie, is like being able to separate the two, because she kind of thinks like she even says it later on, like when she's like, I knew this wasn't working out, and Clark's like, what do you mean by that? She's like, she says later on she doesn't know. I'm sure there's multiple things. It's like, well, blending my personal life and my professional life was never going to work out. She probably doesn't think she's built for relationships. Maybe they just haven't always worked out, or for whatever reason. It also depends on what her storyline is in this show. Like, did her mom leave her? Did her mom die? Like that can vary from iteration to iteration. And her dad being who he is, like maybe that's led to her having has not made it. Maybe she takes too much after Sam, and she is not the best when it comes to relationships. Like, it's just she can't turn certain parts of herself off, both like Lois Lane the reporter, but also some elements of her dad that's kind of baked into who she is, that she can't completely shut them out. But I thought it was that interesting and complicated debate of just right, I wasn't trying to represent anyone other than myself. I was just trying to do good. People would have died if I hadn't intervened, but it's still you do have to think about the larger ramifications. Did you talk to the president from Bavaria, or here, you didn't, you acted on your own. You don't you're jumping in the middle of a long standing battle between countries. Like, the country you're trying to defend its people of has kind of had a complicated history. He's like, yes, but that country's gotten better. There was also the conversation about was it Boravia? Clark was like, we know that president isn't a good guy, and it's she's like, yes, is he kind of stingy, or he's not the best guy? Sure, yes, we believe that. We don't know that. And Lois is all about facts. It's do we have proof of it? No. And as journalists, we can't just go half-cocked off on our feelings. We also have to base it in reality of what proof do we have. We can have a gut feeling, we can think something, but don't state it as a fact when you don't have proof to back it up. And it just showcases kind of how a little loosey-goosey Clark can be, because he puts a lot of his own heart into it, and you have to, at least with being a reporter, or a journalist, there's the whole, you kind of have to be separating yourself from it. You can't make it personal. You have to keep it professional, but those lines blur so much for Clark Kent, the reporter, / Superman, the superhero, I mean, you can make the argument both Lois and Clark can't keep the two separated in their respective situations. Lois and Kent separate reporter Lois from personal life Lois, especially when that's intermingled with your coworker Clark Kent, but also your significant other Superman, who's also so it's muddied waters. There was also the conversation about how Clark handled the president. What did he do? He took him to the desert, put his face up to a cactus. Oh, it's so you torture him. It's no, the needles were this small. It's yeah, but come on, Clark. That's, for him, it's I could have really done, if I was threatening him, I could have done more. But it's no, I wasn't threatening him. I was just saying, if he didn't comply, we'd be having a conversation. It's well, did you say that? It's no, he didn't. He was left it very vague and open. And it's yeah, you can see, you want to side with Clark in the grander moral conversation, but from a logistical standpoint, a legality and all this stuff, Lois is 100% right, and she understands where he's coming from. But it's you have to answer for some of those decisions. She's you being as powerful as you are, you have to take a beat to kind of think things through. And so he gets flustered, and he's I'm gonna go away. She's okay, that's what we always do. You want to walk away when we kind of have to get to these serious points. He's no, I'm not walking away. It's you really are. You also have Lex and his machinations, him going to was it the I don't know if that was the Secretary of Defense. But the moment I saw him, I was hey, God, what was his character's name in Barry? The character's name was Albert. I had to look it up. I could not remember it for the life of me. But he's there along with Rick Flag Sr., who isn't fully on Lex's side, because not everyone in that room was, because some people were well, you arm Boravia with some of its weaponry, a lot of money worth of weaponry, so you are profitably motivated to kind of keep the war going. But he's no, I'm doing this for us. The fact is, who is this guy? What do we really know about him? He comes kind of out of nowhere. It doesn't make any sense. We don't know where his allegiances lie, type of situation. And basically the government won't, or at least the secretary won't make moves even though he has his like reservations about it. I think it's also interesting too because they broached the conversation about kryptonite because it's like, well, even if we brought Superman in, how will we actually contain when there's not much kryptonite? I wonder what happened to kryptonite. Like, how many run-ins has Clark had in? I mean, for it to be known not only by Lex but the government. Granted, it makes you wonder who found that out first. Was it Lex who found that out first, or did the government find out and then let Lex know, or did Lex find out first and then let? Because he studied enough about Clark, so. But it makes you wonder, did Clark destroy all the kryptonite in the world type of situation? I'm wondering. Because that could be a larger conversation too, but maybe it's just like it's so rare. Because, I mean, it could have landed on any other planet based around, like, you know, like rubble from Krypton could have landed anywhere. So maybe only like a tiny part of it. Because you'd think a lot of it would land on Earth, but that's only because Smallville kind of implanted in your head, like, man, there's kryptonite all over the place, up the wazoo, giving people powers, but that's not how that traditionally works, so. I think he's even the one that brought up the Fortress of Solitude to like them as well, about like, oh, you know, he's got like this fortress, like, well, what do we know what he's up to? In fact, Lex ends up breaking into the fortress. The moment like the engineer was like, how are we going to get in there? And he's like, oh, don't worry about it, I got that covered. And the moment to get there, well, first and foremost, while they're nearby, the fortress reveals itself, and then they're able to get in. I'm like, okay, so the Ultraman theory people have was like, well, because of who Ultraman is in the comics, it's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But it's like, well, what approach are they taking? I'm like, they're not taking the comic book approach to Ultraman. There was a theory I had because I heard someone else point out like who Ultraman really could have been underneath the mask. Ends up being kind of what people wondered and theorized, but I thought I can jump ahead and just say that like someone had theorized like, and I thought this myself. I just never talked about it publicly. I commented on it one time when I heard someone else bring it up, but I was thinking, like, I was curious if they were going to kind of do, like, My Adventures with Superman, where Kara plays, spoilers, a slight antagonistic role. And, you know, I was thinking maybe she was being brainwashed, that maybe she was actually Ultraman, instead of, like, well, jumping ahead, like, the Ultraman we ended up being a clone. So it's not like, oh, this is Superman from a different Earth, where we aren't multiversing this yet. The end of his story could arguably set up like him ending up in a different Earth, you know, multiverse wise, but him just being straight up from a different, well, I guess you could almost make the argument it's like the story could be happening in verse, where it's like rather than coming from Earth 2, he's from Earth 1 because that's where he's cloned from, but then he ends up going to Earth 2. So it could almost be his story backwards for the DCU in comparison to what it is in the comics. So that could be the end result there. But either way, they break into the fortress, and it's really sad. All the, you know, robots that get ripped through. Luckily, they're robots, so they are able to repair themselves. Gary included. Good old Alan Tudyk. But then they ended up getting the recording from his parents. The engineer was able to hack in and get all that information. They were hoping just to find any weakness they could use against Clark, and they got the ultimate smoking gun. It's interesting, like how they kind of inadvertently hit him twofold. On just the physical level, they released a monster to keep him distracted while they broke into the Fortress of Solitude. It started off kind of like a slightly adorable monster that turns into a full-blown kaiju that wreaks havoc, and Clark's doing everything he can to save people while also defeating this thing. But it's like, well, it's tough. To hide is tough, because we also know he's not trying to kill it either. He's like, yo, we could study this or find a like humane way to euthanize it. But then the Justice Gang steps in. I wasn't aware of I wasn't expecting them to already be friends to the point they already know his secret identity and everything. So it makes you wonder, like, when did this first meeting come about? You know, Clark has continued to be his own thing, but you got Guy, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific as their own squad. You know, gotta appreciate all the lantern stuff, especially Guy, like, making all those things, especially at one point, like, he's just like, what did he make? He made something that basically starts poking at the thing's eyes. Hawkgirl's literally bashing on its eye with a mace and stuff. I think it's so interesting, like, these, like, Hawk screams that she does. I'm like, is that traditionally associated with the character? Because amongst the trio, Guy's the one I know the least amount. Like, I want to say this might be my first, interaction with anything Guy-related. Hawkgirl and Mr. Terrific I know for different other adaptations. So Mr. Terrific I know because I was introduced to him in a version of the character in Arrow. There was also a Hawgirl in the Arrowverse, but it started as like a crossover between Arrow and Flash, but then became Legends of Tomorrow. Was only in sadly one season, but yeah. It's something that did cross my mind because obviously we don't get to spend a lot of time. We get to learn their personalities and who they are. She's pretty like chilled and laid back, whereas Guy is just a complete and utter insufferable douchebag. And then Mr. Terrific's like the smart guy who gets very frustrated at times. But when the movie was playing, I was like, I'm curious which version of Hawkgirl they're going with. And the fact is, like, this whole conversation about Clark being an alien and nothing ever came up about Hawkgirl. So I'm like, okay, because I think that's the Silver Age version where like they go down the reincarnation route. I want to say Smallville and Legends of Tomorrow went down that route, but then you have like the Justice League animated series. I want to say even the show Naomi on the CW also went down the Thanagarian route of like they're aliens. Kind of, I think the My Adventures with Superman's kind of going down that route potentially too with the introduction of Thanagar. But yeah, so it's like rather than like the alien route, they're going down seems like to be the reincarnation route. I never saw Black Adam, so I'd assume I'm making an assumption because I actually don't know which route they went with Hawkman in that regard. But Mr. Terrific is kind of like the pragmatic one of the group because he's like, yo, we're not going to try, like, oh, here you are, goody two-shoes, trying to, like, capture the thing. It's like, no, we're going to stop the thing. But they aren't really caring too much about the damage they're causing. Like, Clark has to swoop in. He saves a squirrel that's about to get squished, like, protect the little girl who, from, like, some, things that were like exploding near her. It's like he's helping out people because he's trying to minimize the damage. He's actually trying to find a way to deal with this thing outside of the city. But Mr. Terrific sent some bombs in its mouth and then like it exploded in its stomach, killing it. And he had to like stop its dead body from like just completely flattening people. So. But once again, they have a decent enough working relationship that they can work together, but also, like, you know, Guy is busting Clark's balls about, like, hey, yo, like, come on, like, you really were trying to save that thing? We're the Justice Gang, which Hawkgirl and Mr. Terrific are like, no, we're not. You're the only one going for that name. He says, like, right, because he's the leader of the group, he's the one that gets to do the tiebreaker, so it's kind of like, yeah, like, because he's like, I'm the one that gets to decide, like, which name we go by, even though the others don't like that name at all. But at the same time this is happening, Lex does his propaganda move. And it's so sad because like, hey, the Justice Gang is being celebrated. And so is Superman. Kids are like crowding around him like, yeah, Superman. And then it all kind of goes to hell when Lex releases his video being like, yo, this is the actual translation from Clark's parents. And this is something I think is interesting because I've only seen My Adventures with Superman go down this route. And it's kind of something similar that like they've kind of done with Batman, specifically the Waynes in more recent years, have kind of made them not the best people. Like I feel like most versions they were decent people. More recent versions have really kind of leaned into like, nah, the Waynes sucked for a multitude of reasons. Different reasons for different adaptations, but leaning into like them kind of being conquerors is something that they've set up only in like My Adventures with Superman is the only thing I can think of that's kind of really leaned into that, you know, because he's lived by this creed and this message of like, I was sent here to do good, but now like the message plays out and he's like, no, the first part of the message is true, but the back part of it, it's a lie. But you know, Mr. Terrific's like, no, like there's smart people who would not publish this type of stuff without, you know, backing up, and even he believes like, yo, this is true, it is real. And that's kind of shattering because, like, for Clark, that was such a calming thing for him. He defined himself so much on who he is as Superman based around the belief that his parents sent him to here to do good. But now it turns out they had sent you here because they thought humans were simple-minded and easily led. They wanted you. And I don't know if that's... I wouldn't take it as a shot, but I was about to... Because, like, you know, the whole Christ-like God metaphor from the Snyder films, like, you know... you being worshipped in this way, it's almost like they kind of want, like, it's your parents wanted you to kind of be that, but that's not who you are. You just want to do good just for good's sake. But even, you know, guys like, hey, is this true? Because he's like, yo, I made a creed with the core, like, yo, I've got to protect this world from any like alien threats and stuff. It's like we're decent enough co-workers. I wouldn't call us friends, but we're on decent enough level. But it's like, yo, if I need to, I'll deal with you if I have to. So Clark just needed time to breathe, because it's just, he gets walloped by this. At the same time, the world's finding out and people are turning against him. As Clark talks about, what was the nickname they had trending on like social media that he was not a fan of? It was like, was it super shit or something like the Superman shit or something like that, that he really, really hated that nickname, even though he's never online. He's like, I browse a little bit. It's like enough to know that particular name you knew existed, and when Lois used it against you, got really, really irritated. So it's kind of proof of you're a lot more online than you would like yourself to believe. So it's like, once again, that's a larger commentary too, and just like how like we can get sucked up into things of like, even though we're like not the biggest social media people, even we can get wrapped up with like, well, what are people saying about me? And even though you want to try to say like, I'm just going to do good, you can't help yourself in modern day to not get swept up in like the social media of it all. And just like that, Lex gets his win, and now he's turned Superman into public enemy number one. He's like, they finally see him the way I do. I mean, we even found, like, the engineer personally, she signed up because I don't know if it's like, it feels like there's something more going on between her and Lex, even though he's dating Eve, and we see how he deals with, like, his relationships, but I was so curious, like, it felt like there was something deeper there, like, she's like, oh, I'm anti-Superman, that's why I let, like, what happened to me happen to me, like she was experimented on to become, like, in fact, he's the one that gave her the nanites that basically turned her into the engineer. So, and the fact is, she feels like she is so loyal to Lex that she'll go above and beyond. Does feel like there might be some romantic angles there where she is in love with him. It seems like he cares about her, but, Lex being Lex, it kind of feels more like I'm protecting my investment by keeping you close a little bit. It almost seems like, interestingly enough, like I don't know about the engineer at all. I'm not well versed in the authority. But I don't know if this is where James Gunn was kind of going. She feels like she's basically filling the Mercy Graves role a little bit. I mean, Otis is in this, but like I don't know, not unless some other character in this is Mercy, but she's basically filling the Mercy role. So I think rather than Mercy, maybe Mercy does exist in this continuity. We haven't met her yet, or maybe she is in that room, but the engineer is filling that role for now. But my point for going on that whole diatribe is like she sides with Lex on how he view, because it's not just Superman. It seems like he hates all metahumans, but he specifically has an issue with Superman coming out of the woodwork 3 years ago, and now it seems like he's the only conversation that the world wants to have, and that irritates him. And it's just like, once again, driven by jealousy and envy, because in his mind, he wants to warp it to be like, yo, I'm looking after humanity, because he has this grandiose conversation about how someone comes with all the power thinking they've got a solution for like humanity's issues, but it's like, yo, you are just kind of a reflection of how weak humanity is, and I can't stand that, and I refuse to allow that to be. So I'm going to show you how capable humans are, more so than anything. I'm going to show you how capable I am, that I'm the one that beat the Man of Steel, that I beat Superman, me, the very like egotistical bastard that he is. I also love, we finally get that scene that's basically like, people theorize like, yo, what's that eye thing in the background? Whether it's like the first released photo of Superman, it's also in one of the trailers. People were wondering like, is that going to be like the end of the movie? And it's like, no, it's kind of smack dab in the middle. And I love that, well, Clark's not dealing with it because the Justice Gang is already dealing with it. He's just like, I got to take a break, dude. He's like, nah, they got it. And you would just see them fighting it in the background. And I love that he was like, yeah, it's like some dimensional imp. I was like, Myxlplyx? I was like, that's the only dimensional imp I know. You didn't mention specifically fifth dimensional, but you bring up dimensional imp. I can't help it. And I'm like, I mean, obviously I've seen different versions. The most radical version I've ever seen, like very, I guess you can make the argument of the live action version on Supergirl, but obviously more recent, My Adventures with Superman takes a very like different but that artistically takes a lot of liberties with some of the character designs in a very like anime-esque, aesthetic. Like Mr. Myxlplyx like looks way different in that compared to most versions. So I don't know if I'm like, it's probably something else, but I'm like, once again, I can't help but hear Dimensional Imp and immediately think him. So I mean, the situation's resolved because that's just kind of immediately dealt with. So I don't know if Clark helped at all with that because he's just like, because he's talking to Lois and it's like, yeah, I got to go deal with the DOJ. Because she's, he's like, Lois, like, I promise you, I only knew the first part of it. And she's like, hey, I get it. Well, first and foremost, she's finding out that he has a dog because I skipped over the fact is that, Clark went full speed ahead like the moment he got back to the fortress after finding out where they got the video from, found the fortress destroyed like it is, and also Krypto being gone, rushed over to Lex, playing right into his hand, and it's like, you just made yourself public enemy number one. But I think that's also like the point of the like naivete of him being so young and he just kind of doesn't think about the consequences, that he's so like, he's very emotional. He's not able to keep his head steady. And like, you're playing right into Lex's hand. That's why he specifically took the doll. He took Krypto just for that purpose. So I thought that was so interesting. Because once again, I'm going back to this parallel of like, Superman and Lois I talk about it all the time, and you can ignore me because I talk about it all the time, is episode 6 of season 1. There's the episode's called Trust. That basically Clark's like, every time I go out there, even though I've been Superman in that continuity for 20 years, my trust, the people's trust in me is being tested every day I go out there and use my powers. Like, that isn't just a guarantee, like, I will always, like, that's tested every time, and that's kind of proven here where it's just like people are already turning against you and you added more fuel to the fire. Lex knows just how to dig the knife in and twist it where he's muttering about the dog, and Clark's like, yeah, you heard that. It's like, dude, the narrative has already been spun. There's no getting out of it. People have already turned their backs on you just like that, and that's just kind of the age we live in too. Like, you have to be careful. You can also read a little deeper into that too, where it's just like, well, James Gunn getting fired from Disney/Marvel, and then eventually getting rehired because of old tweets. It's not the same, but I don't know if that influenced any part of the script in that regard. You can't help but think about that, like how quickly people will turn on you. But that's just like, once again, that's a larger conversation. That isn't just a James Gunn thing. That's an anyone thing. That's just, you can manipulate online. You can create certain narratives and people will buy into them because like people, someone's always waiting, like the higher you soar, the quicker people are ready to kind of tear you down, and kind of want to believe the worst in you when you can't really even combat it. Because he even, he stated, like, I've always been very open about where I'm from, except for the Kansas part, because to keep Ma and Pa Kent safe, he never mentions where he's from. But he's like, I'm from Krypton, I've came to this world, nothing left of my planet. I'm sure, like, the Kara of it all is kind of something like because we didn't know where Kara existed continuity-wise, like, had they met, and we'll talk about that later, but, so he never expressly was like, I'm the last of my people. He did say, like, his parents and his his people are gone, but, didn't get too specific because he doesn't necessarily need to, because it's like, I think it's just like the Kara, like, just like Ma and Pa Kent, I think the same thing's applicable to Kara, where it's like, I'm trying to keep you as, like, out of the limelight, try to protect as much as like Clark Kent's personal life, or Kal-El's life rather, and separate that from Superman's life. But Lois tries to tell Clark, like, right, I've never, like, going back, she's like, I've never doubted you. I never thought you were like the bad guy they're trying to paint you to be. She like knows like what's in his heart, and he's going to turn himself into the DOJ. And it's like, but you know that's a trap. Like, they're not going to lock you up. And he's like, I know, but Krypto's out there. And it's like, yeah, he's not the best dog, but he still might be scared and alone, because it's like, you're kind of all he really has in this world for the most part, currently. So it's kind of like, yeah, gotta look after him. Men's best friend, even though he can seem like my mortal enemy at times. So turns himself in. Reflex Sr. isn't too keen on the whole thing, but he's like, it is what it is. You did break the laws. You did. You're also not technically, in the grand scheme of things, a U.S. citizen, so we don't have to legally read you your Miranda rights. Either way, he gets locked up in a pocket dimension prison with anyone that's ever crossed Lex, including an ex-girlfriend who wrote a blog about him after they broke up. I'm like, wow, you are a petty bitch. Literally locking up an ex-girlfriend because she was talking shit about you? That's crazy. And then obviously we get introduced to Metamorpho, and he's helping Lex only because his hands are tied, because Lex has his son held prisoner and forces him to make kryptonite, which I think this is the first time we've ever seen, like, I mean, obviously the whole thing is like, right, it drains Clark. Like it, like I don't. I'm trying to think about the different versions, like how extensive exposure would do to him. Like obviously it makes him sick, but like him getting as sick as he was, how even when it got close to his face, it literally started burning his face. I was like, I don't think we've ever really seen kryptonite be utilized to be so like draining and brutal to him. I mean, like I said, it's always made him weak, but it was like to this extent, it's kind of interesting. Also, Lex going full villain. I mean, already was full villain, but how far he was going to go literally took was it Molly, that guy, hostage. This is a guy that, because Clark is, he knew Superman was going to feel responsible for this guy. It's like, this is the guy, like this guy, like Clark's like, I don't know this guy. Like he literally served me food once, but the guy's like, don't tell him anything. Don't worry about me. It's like, yo, good guy. Literally survived 2 rounds of Russian roulette. And it's like, oh, I thought that would last longer. It's like just you're so obsessed with killing Superman that you kill just a regular guy. He's like, all right, I will bring in everyone else you care about. I'll start with that Clark Kent, which I'm like, oh, that's fucking hilarious because Clark Kent's right in front of you. But it's like, smart as you are, you haven't figured him out. I mean, to be a villain, all you have to do is like, Krypto being kidnapped, hurt, and then basically keeping him preoccupied with like tapping in and making him see like he's continuously chasing super squirrels. But also just like straight up murking a dude. Kind of wasn't expecting that, but it's like, hey, you got to lay it. Like, you already knew he was villainous. It's kind of like to show you just how evil he is. Well, he isn't just a villain. He is a super villain. And I was like, that is some dash. I was wondering, like, is there going to be a way out of this? Like, what's going to go on? Like, because he's trying to pump information out. And it's like, the government doesn't really have much say in this. They kind of gave him a lot of free license to kind of do whatever. They'll probably be like, well, we didn't know he'd go that far, but it's still the thing of you didn't rein him in like you could have and should have. You kind of let him run wild, so you are, culpable for that in that capacity. You have Lois obviously worried about Clark while she's trying to unravel this whole thing with Lex, because she's like, I know there's something else involved here. Like, he supposedly spent this amount of money, but apparently, like, looking at it, like, only like a fraction of it actually went to arming Boravia. So it's like, where the hell did the rest of that money go? It's like, oh, him laying the groundwork for doing what he's doing, trying to remove Superman out of his path so that he can do what he wants to do. So she needs to find out where Superman is. Funny enough, Jimmy ends up having a lowdown on where he is, and we find out it's because Jimmy has a thing with Eve Tessmacher. I was like, that's so interesting. I would have never seen that coming. Because when he was like, yo, he's in a pocket dimension, you're like, how the fuck? It's like, mutant toes on your phone. I'm like, who the hell is mutant toes? And we find out it's Eve, who is completely and utterly obsessed with Jimmy, meeting him in a dark alley, like, oh babe, I missed you. She's just like, oh my god, like the fact is, like, I miss, oh my god, your mom. It's like, oh yeah, my mom said hi. It's like, oh my god, I love your mom. I think about your parents just like as if they were my own parents. He's like, yeah, great. After you only met them the one time. I was like, oh god, she's obsessed and kind of crazy. And she's only staying with Lex because it's like, well, you see what he does to his ex-girlfriend, so she's kind of on for a ride. She's, kind of like the whole, she's meant to be kind of like the hot bimbo girlfriend in a lot of ways. And Jimmy's just struggling and be like, yeah, can I get more information out of you? She's like, oh, you're just using me. I thought you'd be happy. He's like, hey, like, she's like, wait, if I help you? Because he's like, yeah, you help me. I can only take down Lex. Like, we can only be together after Lex has been removed from the force. So she's like, wait, if I help you take him down, we can finally be together? And he's like, yeah. She's like, oh, and she started blowing the kisses. He's like, oh, I'm putting each and every one of them in my pocket. I was like, wow. Once again, did not expect Jimmy to have such a pivotal role in that regard of like women being in love with you, one in particular being completely and utterly obsessed with you, which is kind of wild considering it's like, yeah, a supervillain like Lex, who is as crazy and as petty as he is, the last thing you want to do is be in his crosshairs. So Lois goes and visits the Justice Gang, and once again, the whole conversation about Clark, which I love, where it's like, wait, you know that he's Clark Kent? And Lois is like, Jesus Christ, like, the whole point is, like, we need to make sure no one else does, but it's like, you're lucky I already know, but it's like, Guy's the one that let that slip. I'm like, you big idiot. they brought up something that I was like, wait, is that a thing? Is that where they're going with in this continuity? I was like, is that a thing from the comics? I've never known that. Apparently, like, the glasses he wear are special, so they kind of hypnotize people to some extent. Like, they're making it so, like, there's something technological about the glasses. They're not just, like, regular glasses. That, I guess that's their way around the whole, like, hey, people can't tell I'm me because I purposely, like, it isn't just regular glasses. Because he doesn't change himself too much, but once again, we haven't seen a lot of Clark Kent versus Superman in this, so it's we haven't really gotten an opportunity to really see his Clark Kent, just like kind of like Robert Pattinson's Batman. Like, you haven't really seen him define the role of Bruce Wayne because he's pretty much Batman throughout the entire movie. You know, even when he's Bruce Wayne, he's still really Batman. Whereas, like, in other iterations, obviously, you know, in that version, he's still early on in his career that he hasn't fully defined who Bruce Wayne is yet. He hasn't created the mask yet, that the mask of Bruce Wayne, the fun, belligerent playboy type of thing. So, well, not necessarily belligerent. That's a different version, but just the playboy, rich playboy douchebag kind of, you know, persona. Either way, putting all that aside, going back to it, I'm curious, like, is that a real thing, or is that just kind of bullshit that Guy believes but isn't real? Or is it like no, that's just actually how that works. That's how Clark gets around the just putting on glasses to make himself look different type of thing. But initially, the Justice Gang doesn't want to get involved because it would be basically putting themselves in the crosshairs of the U.S. government. And it's kind of like, we're comfortable where we are. We don't want to jeopardize that by getting in the middle of this, getting involved with someone with some charges, some government federal charges against them like that. So, but Mr. Terrific's like, nah, I'll help you. Even though he's not the one that's all about emotions. Once again, he's a little more pragmatic than the others. But he decides to help out. And I love just the whole reveal of his ship. And she's like, you have this like high-tech ship and you have a very slow opening garage door. And he's like, yeah, I'm working on that next. And also when Lois is there, she's like, yeah, before I brought up the whole, like, you know, because you're like, oh, he's my boyfriend. But I mean, we're like, you know, we're seeing each other, but we're not dating. He's like, Lois, I don't care. I don't want to actually talk about it. I don't want to talk about other people's. She's like, you know, but I'm just saying, like, he said, I love you. And I don't know if we're there yet. And just... You know, she's like, I'm just talking to myself out loud, and he's just staring at her. She's like, I'll stop. So they make their way over to like the camp that leads to the device that will take them to the pocket dimension, and I love that sequence. It reminds me of like that hallway sequence in Guardians 3, how that was filmed, and that was like Lois is in his bubble, and then Mr. Terrific, because like I know that T-Spears, but he does like, doesn't he have some background in some form of fighting? I don't remember. I think it came up in Arrow too, but I also don't, because I think that version of the character isn't because I think there's multiple people who've taken up the mantle of Mr. Terrific. The one from Arrowverse, I don't think that's one from the comics. I think that's something they made specifically for the show. I don't remember. But like, I swear he has like some kind of fighting background on top of just being the super genius that he is. But I love that sequence. It's just like, it also, you know, James Gunn as well, but it gives off the vibes of like Yondu's whistle arrow thing, and then just it's so good, like him electrocuting people, knocking them out, I love that, and just like the effortlessness, and it's just like, it's so swagged out and so cool, and even Lois is like, holy shit, you know, very, very impressive. But essentially, like, continuously opening those portals, it's like, yeah, if you get it wrong, leave them open for too long, you eventually create a black hole, which is like, wow, you're kind of a prick building something that's so dangerous. But for him, it's like, I'm so smart, I've got the right people around me too, we have no danger of there ever being a black hole situation. But it's like, you know, once again, playing into the hubris that is Lex's. So at the same time, Mr. Terrific and Lois break in. It's like, well, they can't really wander about because, like, was it like some stream is down below that basically it's like, yeah, you'll basically die if you go swimming in there. Clark is fine because I guess his Kryptonian constitution didn't make it. I mean, I'm wondering... there was almost a part of me wondering, like, well, you know, like, Kryptonians do age differently than humans, so besides just their biology being different, I was wondering, could it be, like, could that be playing into, like, why it didn't seem to have an effect? Because, like, who knows how it would have affected Johnny, but, like, Clark was decently fine. I mean, doesn't seem like there was any long-lasting effects for him later on taking, you know, being forced to take a swim throughout all that. But anyway, I'm jumping around a lot. Like, we have Clark getting released after, like, Metamorpho felt bad about the Molly situation. Like, that guy was killed and he's beating himself up because he's like, I didn't do anything. Because I think he probably has dreams and aspirations of being a hero. I don't know enough about Metamorpho's story. I feel like I have vague pieces to it. Like, I think he became the way he did because he wanted to be a hero. And it's like, well, he's captured, his son's being threatened and leveraged against him. But it's like, I didn't do anything heroic in this moment. So he decides, like, all right, I'm going to help you, Superman. You said you can get to my son. Okay, but, like, problem is Clark's too weak from the kryptonite. It's like, well, I can't necessarily make the sun, but I can put some components together to give the equivalency. And I love that Lex's ex, as well as the guy next to the cell, is like, oh, what, they're up to something, stop it, or we're all going to get in trouble. Clark gets regenerated, saves Metamorpho's son, and carries him, because Metamorpho can't, like, change his body using his powers and fly while also carrying his son. And I love that he stopped those soldiers by, like, turning his body into acid. And I love that it takes a while for his body to reconstitute itself, because he goes around like a floating octopus, essentially. I also was worried about the situation playing out because, like, there's a black hole and everything. I was thinking, like, yo, is that how Krypto's going to get to Kara? Obviously, we find out, like, we ain't that answered. But I was wondering if, like, Krypto's going to go flying in space and, like, maybe that's how he meets up with Kara. Because I was like, I know, like, I've never read the comic, but I was like, the Woman of Tomorrow comic has Krypto as kind of like a recurring character in it, a pretty prominent character by Kara's side in that storyline. So I was like, how do you get... So that's why I was wondering, like, time frame wise, I was like, does Supergirl take place before this or after this? That's what I was kind of curious about. So I was thinking, like, maybe after this, because maybe that's how she finds Krypto, is in space. But it was all a moot point because Clark, pretty badass wise, like, has Metamorpho holding on to him. He's holding on to Metamorpho's son and grabbed on to Krypto and uses his freeze breath to propulsions himself, all of them back. So luckily they get out of there while the thing's closing. Also, poor Mr. Terrific, all his T-Spears getting gobbled up by Krypto. With that situation resolved, Lois ends up taking Clark home to Kansas, Smallville, so that he can, like, recover. And it's really sweet, his parents doting over him. And even, like, his dad being like, Miss Lane, like, is my boy gonna be okay? It's like, yeah, he'll be fine. And, it's like, oh, look at him, this big old softy, acting all tough, but, like, you're a marshmallow inside. Because even Martha busting Jonathan's balls by being like, oh, mush over there. It's like, it's really adorable. He tries to be the tough guy, but, he loves his son so much. But yeah, aside from that, Lois got in contact with Jimmy, who had gotten in contact with Eve, because Eve, after being treated like crap by Lex, once again, super petty. The moment he found out Clark got released, he's breaking cups. He's like, pick that up. Someone brought him another cup. He ends up just, like, knocking it over. I'm like, you're such a little bitch, Lex. Like, he's freaking out, and he throws something at Eve, and she's in the server room running around being like, oh, I'm going to show him. And then we see Ultraman just, like, sitting not too far away. It's like, well, super hearing and everything, can hear everything. So she gets found out, and what she sent Jimmy is kind of like, it's a whole bunch of selfies. You're like, what is she showing me? Lois got a better look, and it turns out, right, Lex has got all his plans laid out. It turns out what he was getting from this, his relationship with Boravia and everything, because he was secretly working with them, was that once they took over the country they're at war with, he was going to get half of it to basically make his own country, like, kind of a tech utopia in a lot of ways. So that was his main motivation behind all this. And once again, removing Superman from the equation, because for one, hates Superman, but it helps to get him out of the picture to do what he wants to. So it's kind of a two birds, one stone thing. It benefits me in the long run to kind of have the world turn against Superman, but I also get a personal enjoyment out of removing Superman from the equation because I hate his guts and everything he is and represents. But Lex is such a prick that he activates that device, opens one of the portals, and is causing a massive split down the middle of Metropolis, because he figures, I'm gonna cause havoc that's gonna force Superman to be where I need him to be and where he's gonna be. So We also had this beautiful moment between Clark and his dad, which I thought was so dope. That once as I brought up earlier, like Clark used so much of like his Jor-El and Lara to define himself and who he is. So he's kind of like, now that I found out the real truth behind what my parents wanted for me to be this conqueror, like it brings into question like everything, because like I said, he built so much of who he is around that as a hero, thinking like I'm doing what they want me to do, but now it's like, well, truth be told is they wanted me to do this, and like it kind of destroys the symbolism of what he represented. But I thought it was beautiful what Jonathan says of like, parents are meant to kind of like be there to teach you. Like, we might mess up and be fallible and this and that, but our job isn't to basically make you who you are. You have to make that. It's like, you, Clark, are defined by the things you do, the choices you make. That's what makes you you. And it's like, right, don't worry about what your parents might have wanted for you. You make the choice for yourself. In that moment, he hugs his dad, because it's like, they are also the ones, and that comes into play later in the episode. I mean, not episode, sorry, movie. I thought it was beautiful ending the movie on that. Like, instead of looking at like the message of Lara and Jor-El, it's like, nah, Pa and Ma can't raising me, because they're the parents that set me on the right path. They let me decide who I'm going to be, but also they gave me the tools and the good natured heart to be the good person I am, to do good in the world. I'm that person because of the foundation they laid, not my biological parents. They might have had their wishes for me, but my dad and mom just want me to make the choices I want to make. They're happy for me to do what I want to do. So, I thought that was just kind of beautiful, bringing that full circle by the end of the movie. But, Clark, decides to go deal with the Metropolis situation, because we find out later on that he sent Guy, Metamorpho, and Hawgirl, mainly to Justice Game, but Metamorpho goes along to it because the Boravia is using this opportunity to wage war, and Clark is busy at the time dealing with the Metropolis thing, and he saves that one car, and I just love that shot when when the dust settles from the building landing and the woman's driving away. Clark's there just in the dust, and him and Mr. Terrific meet up, but end up having to duke it out with Ultraman and the engineer. And I just love that whole situation and that whole fight, especially when it got to the point that she was like using her nanites to crawl in and fill up his lungs, covering his face and specifically his eyes, so he can't use his ocular heat vision stuff. So I was curious. I was like, how is Clark going to get out of this? And what he does is he flies to the sky. And I'm like, at first I was like, is he planning to leave the atmosphere? Because we actually don't know, too, is this a continuity where Clark can breathe out in space or not? Because they said he apparently can hold his breath for an hour, but he didn't have enough time to really grab a breath of air before they impacted his lungs and stuff. But I thought he was going to get higher and higher, and maybe the nanobots would freeze. But his plan was right, she tries to shield him to slow him down, and in that moment he spirals and slams down into the ground, because the point was right, you have two choices. You either let me go to defend yourself, or you take all this impact, because I'll be fine, because I'll be the one I'm actually the only one shielded amongst the three of us. And so she's knocked out. He's able to spit out the nanites, and he dukes it out with his clone counterpart, who is stronger than him. It's almost interesting because it almost feels like a little Superboy-esque in the regards of Superboy, and I think the Silver Age is where this is from. I think the more modern take is the one they used for Young Justice, but the version from Smallville is the one I'm thinking of, where it's Smallville and Titans, where Superboy is half Superman, Clark Kent, and half Lex Luthor DNA. So it kind of felt like they were kind of doing that. I'm probably reading too much into it, but with Lex speaking through him, telling him what to do. So with Lex's brain and know-how and understanding of how to fight Superman with just the brawn of a Superman of your own, it feels a little Superboy-esque. But like I said, I'm probably reading way too much. I don't know if that's them intentionally implementing that in a very different way, but that's kind of where my mind was with it. And obviously it's he can't match him fully brawn for brawn, especially doesn't help with Lex and his whole team behind him. But Clark has his secret weapon, and that's Krypto, who shows up, destroys all the recordings, so like all the devices, so Lex can't give orders to his clone Superman, Ultraman, and so Clark has a little bit more of an even footing, is able to knock him back. I thought it was interesting because some people were thinking because of the trailers that basically his heat vision would burn his eyes, but it's like, no, we see that his eyes were already burned from fighting Ultraman, who would like try to burn Clark's eyes out. But yeah, them duking it out the way they did, I thought was so dope. I love that whole fight sequence, like the kind of like drag out slug fight that they have, especially when the other guys show up and Clark like dispenses of them. They're all like crowding on him, and him like him being horizontal and spinning like that to knock them all off, and then immediately kind of going like does like a what would you call that? A laser beam spiral of death, as he's just like lasering everyone as he's spinning around. I'm like, that looks so sick. I've never really seen, like, at least adaptation wise, I've never seen Superman utilize his heat vision in that specific way, so I thought that was super dope. But also like that final bout with Ultraman, especially like when they're like stuck on that platform and he sees like that bus or whatever coming, him breaking his own arm so that he could slam him into the bus and get sucked up into the portal. Like I said, that could be his way of like ending up in a different universe on Earth too. So like I said, it could be backwards, but I was like, and then like immediately like popping his arm back into place, and Mr. Terrific's like, yo, stop playing around. He's like, dude, I wasn't playing around. I was actually doing some pretty serious stuff there. They make their way over to Lex, and Clark forces his hand. But I mean, doesn't. But he has like the heroic Superman speech of like, I'm not going to beat you up. I'm going to tell you I'm not the alien or the threat you think I am. The fact of the matter is I'm here to do good. I'm like any other person. I try to do right, but I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not infallible. I will sometimes do the wrong thing, but that's what it means to be human, and that's what I am. But it's just kind of like, no matter what you pretend to be, like the government is giving me freelance to go, I will go after you. I basically won't stop. I actually had a little bit of a jump scare when Krypto grabbed him. I legitimately in the theater kind of jumped back. I was like, oh shit, that scared me. Poor Lex basically got Loki'd. Avengers Loki, where he got stomped by the Hulk. It very much gave me that same vibe. And Clark just been like, Krypto, stop. It's like literally Krypto hasn't listened the entire movie. It's kind of like he kind of just does his own thing. We'll get into that a little bit later. But it's like, you kind of felt bad. It's like, looks like your arm might be like sprained or broken. I think he's in a cast later on. So it's like, man, you got all kinds of jacked up by the dog. But at the same time, while this was all happening, the entire like main staff people of the Daily Planet were on the ship, and Lois puts it all out there, and freaking Jimmy's like record, like typing everything up. They publish it, and now it goes out there just after Lex literally got his ass kicked out. His entire plan came undone. He got exposed, and yeah, in that moment, it's just kind of like just that look on his face was just like him frustrated, and so we see him kind of get sent off to Belle Reve by the end, which we don't know where that currently stands continuity wise, because once again, I don't know whether the events of Creature Commandos, once again, the continuity of the DCU, there's going to be connective tissue, sure, but James Gunn wants it to be very fast and loose, where like you don't fully need to have watched everything to enjoy things, but it's like it's little things that help, and eventually you'll probably get to the point where you probably need to, but it's just. So that's when it's probably vague enough where it's like, maybe the events of Creature Commandos have happened, but don't worry too much about it. And on the war front, you had the Justice Gang doing their thing, and they're celebrated. Even Metamorpho did his thing, which Hawkgirl's like, hey, shouldn't he join us? And it's like, no, he shouldn't be a part of the Justice Gang. With a face like that, kind of ruined all the branding. I was like, oh, Justice Gang, that's a pretty dope name. All right, he's in. It's like, Jesus Christ. Now that he has one more person that's going to vote the way he wants to, guy, once again, continuing to be the prick that he is. So it all worked out in the end. Mr. Terrific's closed the thing that was opening up. And it kind of reverted, like any buildings that were directly affected by like basically being reality kind of being ripped apart in that moment slowly came together. Everything else kind of stays destroyed. Even the parts of the buildings that weren't directly affected by it stayed destroyed. Cause I was like, man, that's a lot of cleanup. That's a lot of the city that took a massive amount of damage. But like I said, some of that got repaired, not all of it. So but with Lex taken down, we had that moment between Lois and Clark, and it's like, oh, well, Superman is like, oh, I'll interview, I'll give you the interview, yada yada, give you the background story, and then we have Perry and I think Jimmy and someone else being like, so how long they been together? And Jimmy's like 3 months. So I was like, wait, so is that implying that they know Superman is Clark, or is that just implying them knowing that Lois and Superman are a thing? I don't know. Oh yeah, because it's definitely that they know that Clark is Superman, because there was that whole conversation earlier in the movie where it's like, oh, Clark was like, oh yeah, we put on that little fake argument in front of Jimmy and the others, and they ate it up. It's like, because you're not letting them know that they're dating, trying to keep their relationship secret. But it's like, oh no, not only do they know you're dating, they also know who Clark really is. It's like, yeah, we kind of saw through that. We kind of let him do whatever we want to. That's why I think they give him a pass with some of that stuff. Maybe not. I don't know. It feels like that's implying like they know Clark is Superman. But we have to wait to see what the future holds on that front. But very special, beautiful moment where they flying in the air and kissing. You're just like, it's just like I don't know which one came first. I'm assuming the Superman thing came first, but I don't know if they did it first in the comics. But just like the upside down. I mean, it's anyone, but I think it's mainly Mary J. and Spider-Man who do that, but maybe he does it with Gwen Stacy too and stuff like that. But yeah, just like I think that's probably just an iconic thing of like Superman and Lois flying and just kissing, which is really adorable and beautiful. It's interesting too because of what this movie sets up going forward. That obviously the metahumans, in the grand scheme of things, are viewed a certain way. They were corporatized, and they kind of already knew that these were Maxwell Lord's people. Even he, got a quick cameo from Sean Gunn as he talked shit about Lex as when he got arrested. But other than that, like the secretary's talking to. Rick Flag Sr. about like, well, now how do you feel about things going forward? Because now the public views doesn't really have as much faith in like the government and its military, but more so metahumans. It's like, yes, superheroes are the ones kind of still in the limelight in its moment. So it's like it's kind of shifted the dynamic, and we had that look from Rick Flag Sr. So I'm curious to see what that means for him going forward. Once again, like, I'm assuming the events of Peacemaker take place after this, because we saw Peacemaker on television being interviewed about this and taking the very obvious stance that he would about Superman's predicament and stuff like that. So, and then final cameo we got was at the very end where Kara shows up, and it's just like comes in drunk as shit, and also Millie Alcock doing an American accent. I was curious what her accent was going to be for this. I made a short talking about it, but yeah. So she comes in with an American accent. She's drunk, kind of setting up this thing of, yeah, she goes somewhere with a red sun so she can actually get drunk, because anywhere else you can't get drunk. And she's like, yeah, thanks for looking after my dog. It's also like, oh, your dog is so misbehaved because of you. He's literally slamming her against the ground, and she's like, oh, good Krypto, laughing at it as like they're cracking the ground more and more. And even Gary, super robot number 4, being like, oh my God, that's, if I had any emotions, I'd be kind of worried for her right now. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a bad thing. He's like, Clark's like, yep. So I'm curious if that's implying like Supergirl takes place. I would assume Supergirl takes place after this. Not less, while she was off on her adventure, she left Krypto on Earth with Clark, but most likely like because James Gunn has said like some of the movies, at least some of the plans they have is like, not everything's going to necessarily be in chronological order. You can they'll take places at different points throughout the timeline. So that's why I was like, it's not clearly set being like, oh, Supergirl definitively takes place after this, or Peacemaker season 2 definitively takes place after this. But they're probably most likely going to be continuations of the world post Superman, but we'll see. I mean, because most of Supergirl is like a, once again, having never read Woman of Tomorrow, just what I picked up, it's just, for the most part, it's just kind of an intergalactic story. Space opera, as people puts it. So she's probably not on Earth. I don't know how much of Earth she's on at all during that. So, but just kind of a nice little cameo, and also nice to see. Like I said, I didn't know like what their dynamic was. So like, oh, like Haiti already met Car. Turns out they've known each other. Who knows how long they've known each other? She already has her suit. Because we don't know where his suit comes from. Did his mom make it? Because she already has her Supergirl suit. So maybe she's already been established as Supergirl on Earth. Very much like a My Adventures with Superman thing. But she's kind of gone out and done her own thing. So maybe she hasn't spent a lot of time on Earth. So I'm curious. It's details like that. Do I really need an answer? No, but I'd love an answer to it. So yeah, just kind of a fun way to end it all fun. Other post-credit tease being just that moment between Mr. Terrific and Superman where he's like, yeah, I mean, that's a little... He's like, what, you want me to pull the buildings apart and then put them back together? He's like, no, I'm just saying it's just a little uneven. He's like, all right, and just walks away. He's like, sorry, I didn't mean to... And just Mr. Terrific just walking, just kicking a rock, and Superman just... sometimes I can be such a jerk face. I'm just... Okay, I once again, I love the way he talks in this, because he talks like such a... Boy Scout, you know. So I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I'm very excited to see the continued growth of the DCU. Obviously, we've got Peacemaker this year. Next year, we have Supergirl and Lanterns. I don't know where James Gunn currently is with Creature Commando season 2. But also, the Clayface movie is supposed to be next year too, right? Or is that... I think that's supposed to come out like later 2026. So I think that's also coming out next year, but I could be mistaken. I don't know if there's going to be any animated projects that comes out in that time frame, like My Adventures of Green Lantern, or like that Starfire cartoon, or that other like Academy DC series that they were coming out with. So I don't know where anything on that front stands, but those are like the live action things I'm aware of. We also don't know where things... Well, James Gunn has said he's working on a pseudo sequel. He's been very vague about it on purpose, but like some people wonder, like, oh, is the next movie he's working on a World's Finest movie? It's kind of what some people wondered. Is it going to be a movie where it's like, it's maybe not like a full Superman sequel? Maybe it's not necessarily World's Finest Superman and Batman, but it might be like Superman and some other characters. It might be like Superman and his friends. Like who knows? Because if we're not getting a Justice League this soon, because a lot of the other core members haven't been set up yet. So, but I'm curious, like, I'm really curious to see where things kind of go as we continue down the continuity of the DCU. What else they set up, what other characters get included, what the future holds. I'm very, very excited. But yes, I've run my mouth off for a very, very long time. I do apologize. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.